Hello and welcome to episode number 43 of Chill Squared. I'm your host, Andrew Chelney, and as per usual, we've got a ton to talk about today. Recording on Monday as opposed to Thursday due to pretty airtight scheduling conflicts. Hope you don't mind. Before we get into it here, same spiel every week, but the important still at a high level. Please follow the podcast on Twitter at Show Squared and on Facebook at Show Squared for more hot takes, news about future guests, poll questions, and a whole lot more. Please rate the show if you enjoy listening. It means a lot to me. And every time you either like the show on SoundCloud, give it a rating on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, leave a rating, leave a comment, etc. A puppy gets a hug from its owner. I don't make the rules here, just making sure you are in the know. If you prefer listening to podcasts on YouTube, search Show Squared Podcast, and the show is there too. The show is everywhere from iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and every other platform you enjoy listening to podcasts on. If Show Squared isn't on your preferred platform, shoot me a tweet or a DM, and I will put it on there. I'm not sure if this is relevant or important or whatever, but I figured I'd put it in here just in case. Better to be safe than sorry. Though I am a SiriusXM employee, this podcast is not affiliated in any way with the company. The opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of SiriusXM. If you're angry at my takes, direct them to me and only me, please and thank you. The playoffs are finally here. Matchups are official. The schedule was released, and now it's all a matter of waiting until Wednesday for Game 1. For people like me and my guest, who I'll introduce in a second, it means choosing a team to support while yours didn't make it. While for the fans of teams who are in the dance, it means stocking up on supplies as you get ready for the emotional roller coaster that is the NHL playoffs. So we'll talk our playoff predictions. I've got a couple potentially scorching, white hot scorching takes that some fans will like and others probably will not. So in advance, I apologize. Just letting you know that. Is this a good playoff format, or is it an atrocity that needs to be purged from the earth as soon as possible? I received a message a few days ago from Mark Freitas, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, asking what I think of it, so I decided, why just get one view when you can get two? We'll discuss the current NHL playoff format during the show. Also, coaching carousel in the couple of days since the end of the regular season. Bob Boughner fired in Florida, since been replaced by Coach Q, Joel Quenneville. I tweeted this the other day on my account at Chelney Andrew. I think the Wild swung. They should have swung and said got striked out by looking at the pitch, and now they're going back to the dugout, defeated, looking for answers when Joel Quenneville probably could have been theirs for the taking. Now Philadelphia was in the mix, or some other teams in the mix. Minnesota should have been the team that gave Coach Q the blank check and earlier on in the season, and they would have been in the playoffs. But that didn't happen, and now Florida has one of the best coaches in the league. Very, very interesting. Also, Phil Housley fired in Buffalo, and Willie Desjardins fired from his interim coaching spot in LA. Would have to think Ken Hitchcock won't be coaching the Oilers next season either, but that remains to be seen. Also, this is breaking news to us as of this recording, but according to Eric Duhatschek on Twitter, it looks like Todd McClellan will likely be the new head coach of the Buffalo Sabres. Big news. Is that a good fit? Who are other good fits on teams in need of a new coach? We'll talk. Also, regular season awards need to be handed out. We'll discuss who should win the biggest awards of the year. Joining me this week is returning guest and writer for Die by the Blade, Anthony Chandra. And what's up? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Good to be back.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're on again. By the way, before we started the show, you were drinking. What is it called? Vita Coco? What is this? Can we get it together? What is this drink of? I can't even figure it out. Vita Coco. What is that?
Well, by their own description, they replenish lost electrolytes, recharge with nutrients, and hydrate with the goodness of coconut. My wife says I don't get enough vitamins, so this is my mandated Chandra household beverage.
Vita Coco. This episode,
It's good. It's fine.
This show is not sponsored by Vita Coco, in case you could not tell before.
But it should be.
Are you a coconut fan? Well, I feel like you are, right? Because you're drinking it. But coconut, I could never get into coconut.
Really? Yeah, I like it. I like chocolate covered coconut stuff like that. I'm not sure I like it just like the grated version of it like by itself. But yeah, it's fine.
The grated version. Oh my god.
I don't even know what else to call it.
No, you're right. So the big news of the week, the playoffs are upon us, right? We've got our matchups. Now, I'm going to go through my spiel, but I want to hear what you have to say about these matchups first. I'm assuming you made a playoff bracket. Give me your round one predictions, and if you have any hot takes, let us hear them.
Yeah, do you want me to just start kind of top of the West and make our way down?
You got it.
Cool. All right, yeah. Calgary, Colorado. Colorado hasn't. I mean, they disappointed me a little bit this year. I thought they were going to be a little better than they were. Having them just squeak in is nice because it kind of validates. I went pretty hard on the opinion at the beginning of the year that they would absolutely return to the playoffs. So I'm glad they kind of bailed me out at the last minute from that prediction going south. But they're not remotely impressive to me. And to be honest, for a top seed, Calgary's probably, in my opinion, the maybe besides Washington, the weakest top seed, of the four. So I'm still going to go with Calgary. I think they take this one in 5 games. I think, Colorado takes one of their home games and, they split the other. But, yeah, I'm not sure that one's really, in my eyes, very debatable. I think Calgary across the board is just the better lineup.
My only concern with Calgary is the goaltending because it's been spotty throughout the season. And while they can outscore you, for the most part, I mean, Colorado probably one of the only teams that could compete with that level of scoring, obviously with Rantanen and Landeskog and all those guys. Goaltending, to me, would be the biggest factor in that matchup. But I do agree with you. I do have Calgary beating Colorado. I'm not sure how many games it was, but I would assume that it probably won't take longer than 5 games. You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Smith is kind of the wild card there. He's not good. He's fine. But he's not built for, I don't think, a sustained playoff run. But I don't think Colorado's a strong enough team to bounce such a strong roster like Calgary has out, that early. So yeah, they're a pretty straightforward win for me.
San Jose, Vegas, what do you got?
Yeah, that one's a little tougher. I like San Jose a lot, and maybe more than I should based on kind of what they've shown us. I mean, they're a good team. There's no doubt about that. They're very good, but they're in the same boat as Calgary a little bit. Their goaltending has not been good this year. And Vegas, man, they got some valuable experience last season, obviously making it all the way. They added some really impressive pieces. They've got Mark Stone in there. Since the trade deadline, I've liked them a lot, and that's saying something I already did. But I'm going to go with Vegas in 7, and that was tough for me to do because I went into the season with San Jose as one of my top contenders, and to bounce them from the first round just kind of feels wrong. But I think Vegas definitely takes them out.
This is one of my scorching takes here. I'm going to say Vegas sweeps San Jose.
Whoa.
I'm going to say clean sweep of San Jose. I mean, their goaltending has been an atrocity. And
terrible.
Vegas is going to exploit that. Now, I'm not saying Vegas has Fleury playing at a 980 save percentage or whatever. I'm not suggesting that. But I will say that Vegas will absolutely exploit Martin Jones and by extension Aaron Dell and will find a way to outscore San Jose. And I mean, I think it's going to be a clean sweep. I mean, I know Sharks fans probably won't enjoy that take or what have you, but I do see Vegas just dominating San Jose on the scoreboard, and whether the defense can compete, that's one thing that we could discuss. But at the end of the day, Martin Jones, at least this season, hasn't shown that he can stop that shot. You know what I'm talking about? Like that shot, that changes the outcome of a game. He hasn't shown that up to this point in the season. That could change come game one. We obviously, hockey is a game of the 1 second one thing happens and then the next second something else happens. We don't know for sure, but as we've seen this season, Martin Jones has been incredibly disappointing. And I think Vegas will take advantage of that and clean sweep. And also, Kevin Kurz at K Kurz NHL, who was at Sharks practice today, said, and I quote, this is a tweet, and I quote, "Looks to me like it's Michael Haley, getting most of the reps on the fourth line. That would make Donskoy and Radil the extras." Really? Pete DeBoer is out here putting Michael Haley on the fourth line and taking Jonas Donskoy out of the equation. If you are telling me Vegas isn't going to sweep the Sharks with that kind of lineup coaching, then I feel like we need to have a different discussion.
Andrew, how can you argue with a guy who's got 4 goals in 97 career games? Come on, man.
He's due.
The productivity is there. He's due. Come on.
Due.
Hey, you know what's crazy? That average is actually not that much worse than Donskoy's 1 goal in 32 games.
Oh man,
they're almost identical. Yeah, man, team grit. Let's go. It's playoff hockey. Gotta have your Ryan Reeves. So Haley, it is.
I feel like Reeves is actually sort of okay at hockey. He's not great. He's not great at it, right? Don't get me wrong.
Haley. He's better than Haley.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no question about it. I would rather have Ryan Reeves than Michael Haley on a hockey team any day of the week. And twice any day of the week, honestly. I mean, Ryan Reeves, although not a perennial 40-goal scorer, brings more to the table than Michael Haley does anyway. Besides, Ryan Reeves could fight also. So I feel like Ryan Reeves just is beating Michael Haley in every single category.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually, go ahead. No,
I'm going to say like Vegas in 4. I mean, there's no, it's over. Vegas is going to sweep.
Hey, it could happen. Crazier stuff happens, man. And you know what? The point you bring up, and it's pretty much the overarching theme of this series. Yeah, it's in the playoffs more than any other time. It's a goalie battle. A lot, the best goalies are the ones who kind of have a tendency to carry their teams. I'm not saying that Vegas necessarily needs to be carried by a strong goalie. That's not what I'm alluding to at all. But San Jose simply can't be. I mean, if Martin Jones were to get hot right now, like wow, great, but good luck with that. It's been 82 games of really subpar play from him. So yeah, I mean, a Vegas sweep would surprise me to see San Jose not win a single game in that series. But hey, stranger things have happened in the NHL playoffs.
Next matchup, we got the Predators and the Stars. Your take.
Yeah, so as a Sabres fan, I have to hate Dallas forever. That's just a rule.
Okay, but I had Jude Hull on a few months ago, and he told me that was a good goal. So I can't pick sides here.
Mind, but okay, out of his mind. That is not a good goal. Stop it. The NHL came out and admitted it.
Well, okay, also you're biased, and also he's biased. So there's no real clear unbiased take in both of these examples, because you're on the Sabres side, he's on the Stars side. So there's no clear-cut winner. You guys kind of both cancel each other out.
I'm gonna politely just abstain from commenting, but I don't agree. Let's put it that way. All right. Anyway, back to the matchup at hand. Ben Bishop, and not just because of what he did for my fantasy team this year, but he's been really, really awesome this season. And he's almost been, in my opinion, probably the most like underappreciated goalie in the league this year. For what he's been able to do for Dallas. I think his presence alone makes them at least dangerous. I mean, obviously they've got scoring threats across the board. You got Radulov, Sagan, Ben. Yeah, they're not a joke, and I think they'll give Nashville a tough series, especially right out of the gate here. But I'm going to take Nashville. I think overall like I said before, when it came to Vegas, the experience is huge. They know what it takes to go, make a deep run. I do see them exiting that series 6 games.
This might be another hot take here. I'm going to say Dallas in 7. I'm going to say Ben Bishop, has impressed everybody, right? Because over the past few seasons, it's been Ben Bishop is big and he's only good because he's big and etc. This season, he's surpassed all expectations in pretty much carrying this team to the postseason, because this is a team that has only scored 210 goals all season. That is the lowest. That is the lowest goals for in the entire Western Conference, and who out of the teams that have made the playoffs, and that is also the lowest from the Eastern Conference as well. So of all the teams that have made the postseason, 210 goals is the lowest amount of goals that a team has scored to make it this far. So if you're not going to score goals, you need some incredible goaltending to make up that differential. And Ben Bishop has been there this season to pit stop this team and carry them. I'm not sure how his back is still holding up from carrying this team. But the Dallas Stars, reason number one why they are in the postseason is because of Ben Bishop's play. And also, to an extent, Anton Khudobin has been there to pick up the slack when Ben Bishop isn't playing. So you have these two goaltenders that are playing well above their pay grade, at least right now. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs, but if we take into consideration what goes on in the regular season this year, it looks like Ben Bishop can hold down the fort. And with that being said, you know my opinion on Pecorino in the playoffs. He usually is pretty good in round 1. I'll give him that. He's usually pretty solid in the early rounds. But I do think the Stars, if they have puck luck on their side, could, because again, the Predators are a very, very good team. They could win Game 7 if necessary.
Yeah, I wouldn't count Dallas out of that series by a long shot. It's a closer matchup than I think a lot of people realize. But yeah, it's a lot of things you said. It could very well end up being a goalie battle, and Dallas needs to get their guns going, early. You're not gonna out defense Nashville, in my opinion, right? So it's either hope Bishop continues to stand on his head or find a way to generate more offense. I don't know that both of those things can happen simultaneously for them or will happen. I'm sure it can. But yeah, that's why I got to go with Nashville on this one. But if Dallas comes out of that series, I won't be quote unquote surprised. You know what I mean? Necessarily.
Sure. And the last matchup in the Western Conference for round 1, Winnipeg and St. Louis. St. Louis, a team that was dead last in the entire league in January, is now in the playoff picture, is in the playoffs, and is playing the Winnipeg Jets in the first round. Anthony, your take?
Yeah, Sabres fans in particular have kind of paid close attention to St. Louis this year. For one reason, we have their first round pick, so obviously their standing was of importance, and the fact that Ryan O'Reilly has been having a really nice year for them, and that trade is looking pretty bleak. But yeah, I'm going to pick St. Louis. I don't like how Winnipeg finished the season at all. And it's another tough one for me. They're almost like San Jose, in my eyes, where I had them making a pretty deep run this year, or at least I thought. But I think St. Louis is hot. I think they're confident. Binnington, man, he's awesome. He's really come in and kind of he's been the biggest factor in saving their season. Yeah, I'm going to go St. Louis. This one could go either way, but I think St. Louis is the stronger team.
I have to agree. I mean, I love the way St. Louis has been playing from Craig Berube onwards, except for the first, couple of weeks where they had to figure out Craig Berube's system. Since then, they've been absolutely incredible. And Winnipeg, I mean, they are my team of the West if I had to choose one. But this season has been they should be better. They just flat out should be better than what they were this regular season. Hellebuyck wasn't as good as he has shown to be, and the team just hasn't been as dominant as they should be, at least as they should be on paper, because that team is pretty stacked. So you take that into consideration, and I just feel like St. Louis is riding the hot hand here, and they might knock out the Winnipeg Jets in 6 to 7 games. I mean, I have to agree with you on this one.
Yeah, everything you said. It's weird for me to I guess call a team that had 99 points in the regular season an underachiever, but they should have been better, I think. You know what I mean? They were, in my opinion, the favorite in that division going into the year. Nashville obviously is awesome as well, but yeah, I thought they would win the Central, and falling short of that, albeit by 1 point, is a little surprising to me. And they're going into the postseason pretty cold. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. Yeah, I think St. Louis takes this one, but again, another series that I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way.
Absolutely agree. Now, moving on to the Eastern Conference, the top matchup is the juggernaut Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Anthony, I mean, I feel like I know your take on this one. I want to hear it anyway, but I feel like if you pick Columbus in this one, you might be reaching a little bit. That's going to be a little bit of a reach, in all honesty.
Dude, Dikembe Mutombo couldn't reach that far. Yeah, no, it's going to be Tampa. I mean, come on. Columbus had to sell off, the farm basically to even be competitive and squeak in this year. Tampa Bay is just going to obliterate them. This is coming from a guy who's watched a lot of Tampa Bay, having them be in the Sabres division. I can tell you they're as good as their record shows. They will curb stomp Columbus. This is my only sweep that I believe will take place.
It's tough to not give Columbus a game, even at home, but I just feel like you're absolutely right. I mean, Tampa Bay Lightning are just so good. And if my memory serves me right, they did sweep the Blue Jackets in the regular season matchups. Mm-hmm. So there's no argument, at least that I can think of, to suggest that Columbus could even come close to winning the series or even taking it to 6-7 games. I mean, Tampa Bay, 1, knows how to beat Columbus. 2, knows how to beat, anybody in the league. Have you seen their record? And 3, this team is, if Tampa Bay somehow, some way loses in the first round, that is going to be the most catastrophic collapse in sports, I would have to say, at least in recent memory, because this is a team that has tied the Red Wings for most regular season wins in history, right? And if this team that has looked so dominant, that has looked so just better than anyone else in the league, if they come in round 1, although they do have a ton of pressure on them, considering they are far and away the best team in the league, they do have a lot of pressure riding on that. And Columbus, I guess, has a lot less because no one is expecting them to win. There are no expectations because they are playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. If Tampa Bay doesn't win this series, this is going to be an utter collapse.
Yeah. No, it's going to be, akin to Virginia losing in the first round to a 16 seed last year in the NCAA tournament. No, it's the most lopsided matchup, and yeah, it would be a massive disappointment for Tampa Bay to put together a record-breaking season and end up getting beaten by John Tortorella's Blue Jackets in the first round.
I mean, John knows how to win in Tampa, right? Because he did it in 2004. But I also feel like Virginia would have beaten that 16 seed last season if that was a 7-game series. So, who knows? But Tampa Bay, probably 4 games. I mean, maybe Columbus takes one, but it's probably going to be a sweep for Tampa Bay. Boston, Toronto. Now, this is going to be probably the closest matchup of any of the ones that are in round 1 because of how just so close these teams are to talent level, to coaching level, to just every single level that you can think of. These teams are pretty much neck and neck. Which team do you see coming out of this slaughter with a victory? Because this is gonna be a war. This is going to be a complete war, barring a collapse. I mean, I would assume pretty safely this is gonna take at least 6 games, and I would confidently assume it's gonna take 7. In your opinion, who's gonna come out on top?
Yeah, I've got this one going 7 games as well. I think that extra home game that gives Boston the edge for me. I don't think they're gonna steal any games from Toronto in Toronto. But yeah, this is a really close matchup, probably the closest one, of the first round. Which is kind of an indictment of the current format a little bit. Yeah, I think it's Boston. I think they kind of separated themselves after being kind of decimated with injuries to start the year. It was when the Sabres started out really hot, and the conversation was, will Boston catch us? It's like, well, yeah, they did, like by a lot. I think they've come on stronger, maybe more than any other team. Toronto has some really glaring weaknesses defensively, and Boston maybe.
And his name is Nikita Zaitsev and Ron and Hainsey also.
Yes, but I think besides Tampa, they might be the team best suited to exploit those weaknesses in the East. So yeah, I got to give it to Boston. But again, I know I've said this like 3 times now. Wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way.
I have to agree with you. I think Boston takes this one in 7. And also, if Boston wins this series, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Babcock was fired. I would not be surprised if that was the case, because time and time again, we've seen this with Toronto. They do very well in the playoffs. And they do very well up to the playoffs, and then they get there, and then they lose. And then there's just no moving up from there. A lot of that has to do with the Boston Bruins, but I feel like there's just no difference this year or the last time they met up. At the end of the day, I think the Boston Bruins take this one in 7 games. I absolutely agree with you on this one. And if Toronto does lose, I would not be shocked in the slightest if Mike Babcock was canned in Toronto. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think with Sheldon Keefe kind of in the wings there, and he's been a hot name, obviously, in coaching speculation. With him being out there and just kind of waiting and Babcock, what would that be, 3 years in a row of a first round exit? It's not what Toronto brought him in for. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him out. I'm just curious if they give kind of reimbursements or return checks for parades that never happen, because there were a lot of fans scheduled on that parade and the season started.
Yeah, well, scheduling early parades, as we've seen time and time again in Buffalo or in other cities, not the best thing to do, because you probably shouldn't plan anything until it's actually happened. But anyway, the last 2 matchups here could also very much go either way. Washington, Carolina, and Islanders, Penguins. Washington, Carolina, I mean, this could go so many different ways. Where do you see this going in round 1? Because, I mean, there's so many situations where Washington can take it. There's also a surprising amount of situations where Carolina could take it. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, again, another really great matchup. Carolina is fun. They're just a fun team. They're entertaining. They're, analytically sound. They've played, I think, better than their standing this year. Washington, though, they're the returning champs. They do this every year. They're in the playoffs every year. Ovechkin is just lethal. He just hits a whole, and to say he hits a whole nother level is just insane because he's at a high level, throughout the regular season. He doesn't have cold spells. So it's so tough because, you almost root for a team like Carolina because they're just so fun and they're endearing, they're interesting. But apples to apples, Peter Mrazek, Braden Holtby, give me Washington.
That's what I have to agree with you on. At the end of the day, I mean, in terms of coaching, right, there are things that you can say Rod Brind'Amour does better than Todd Reirden at. There are also things that you could point to and say Carolina does better at than Washington. But at the end of the day, Peter Mrazek is such a hot and cold goaltender that it really hinges on which version of him gets into the net. Because if the hot Peter Mrazek comes in, I mean, good luck scoring, and the Carolina Hurricanes will win the game, probably. But if the other side of Mrazek comes in, and let's say Carolina can't buy a goal, and it's over, then Ovechkin will score, Backstrom's going to score, and that'll be that. There's so much hinging on the goaltending, which, I mean, every playoff series does. I mean, you can't win games if your goaltender can't stop a beach ball, a la Pekka Rinne in against Winnipeg last season, in the Pittsburgh final a couple years ago. I mean, we've seen that happen very frequently, but it really does hinge on how good this goaltending is. And if Holtby comes in playing the way that he did last season, there's no contest, and Holtby will steal at least one or two games, and the Caps will win that series. But if Carolina can squeak in a goal, if they can have a bounce, if they can have, one of those goals that Holtby can have, that Holtby would want back, then we have a series. Then we have something that might take 7 games, or we can see Carolina end it before then. Because Rod Brind'Amour, I mean, this guy I feel like is a very underappreciated coach. I mean, this is a guy who took this team and carried them to their first playoff berth in 9 years.
Without Jeff Skinner.
Yeah, exactly. They traded Jeff Skinner for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they got better. Without a 39-goal scorer. I mean, they traded him for a Dunkin' Donuts $20 gift card, and they got better. It's definitely a weird situation to be in, but I mean, it's sort of what happened in New York, I guess, with John Tavares leaving, and they got a lot better than they perhaps should have been. We'll talk about this later on in the show as well, but I mean, Barrett Trotz for Jack Adams, it should be a lock anyway. Last matchup here, Islanders Penguins. This is going to be another one of my hot takes. I told you that it was going to be my hot take prior to the show, but I didn't want to say what it was. But I want to hear what you have to say about this matchup before I go in and make half of that matchup's fan base very upset.
Yeah, so I've waffled on this one like 3 or 4 times, and on Twitter I said Pittsburgh, and I still don't know who I like more. I mean, it's gonna hinge on something that I don't feel is very reliable yet, and I've been proven wrong by this guy on several occasions. Can Robin Leonard do what Robin Leonard did in the playoffs? I mean, man, he's a Vezina candidate, or at least he should be, and he was, he had probably the bounce back year of the season out of anybody. So, man, it's so tough. I mean, they're evenly matched teams. New York under Trotz, like you said, has just been night and day, and it really speaks to what a good coach can do. But again, and maybe I lean too much on this, but Pittsburgh's got the experience. New York's got the extra home game. I'm gonna go with New York for the sole reason that another Pittsburgh-Washington conference semi would just drive me into insanity. So I think I'm going to stick with New York.
I'm going to say the Islanders in 5 games. Now this is going to very much upset the Penguins fans, and I didn't sort of get into it with the Penguins reporter. I think it was this morning or yesterday. I forgot which one it was, but he tweeted out that the Penguins are going to dominate the Islanders. It'll be a 5-game series or whatever. And I read that, and I don't think that guy has watched a single Islanders game this season.
No.
I mean, I can't believe just how badly they embarrassed the Maple Leafs on multiple occasions. They've embarrassed multiple teams on multiple occasions, and this is a team. I mean, it hurts me as a Rangers fan to say this, but to be an objective hockey fan, you look at the situation and you go, this team is for real, whether you like it or not. And I feel like the majority of the hockey universe was very wrong prior to the season starting, because of the very questionable decisions that Lou Lamoriello made prior to the start of the season, and also not doing a whole lot at the deadline either, and yet they're here anyway. So it really goes to show just how good Barry Trotz has been. Barry Trotz and Mitch Korn. You have to give those two guys so much credit for what they did. Mitch Korn, I mean, revitalized Leonard's career, Grice's career. Barry Trotz has led this team of, I mean, they don't really have a star, and yet they have just exceeded all expectations and then some. This is a team that is to be taken seriously, and I do think that because they still believe they are the underdogs in this series, even though they have home ice advantage at the Coliseum, this is the first home game that will be played at Nassau Coliseum for Game 1 home game in 31 years. 31 years. The Islanders know that, and yet the Penguins are the almighty scary Penguins, right? At the end of the day, the Penguins are never out of anything until they are officially out of it. So the Islanders know that, and I feel like they, in order to show the rest of the league, hey, we are for real, take us seriously, they are going to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think 5 games is a little ambitious, but hey, playoff hockey, aside from the Columbus-Tampa series, is unpredictable. It's whichever team comes in hotter, and Pittsburgh did not finish the season on a super high note. They're 5-2-3 in their last 10. Their goaltending's been okay. It's been hot and cold. They've had bad stretches, right? I think the goaltending, like I've said in a couple of these series, is going to really tell the story here. I mean, Robin Lehner's benefited obviously from a very, very sound defensive system that Trotz has put in place. And I actually think it's the type of system that could, if you're going to thwart the Penguins, that's how you do it. So I think they match up well. I had it at 6 games either way. I don't think this one goes to a game 7. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see New York win that series convincingly.
I'm going to take it one step further. I have them beating the Capitals in round 2. I have the Islanders going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Although Tampa does, I have Tampa beating the Islanders in the ECF and then going to the final. But I do have Washington bowing out to the Islanders in round 2. How many games that will take, I don't know. But I do think at the end of the day, the Islanders will find a way to just crawl and climb their way to the Eastern Conference Final. Tell me I'm crazy, but I feel like that might just happen.
I don't think you're crazy. I think, if they do make it past Pittsburgh, I mean, Washington's not a bad matchup for them either. Trotz knows those guys. Obviously the system has changed a little bit since he was in place, but he knows those players. He knows the team. And if you're looking for a coach who would give you the best chance to beat Washington, it's definitely the coach who won the cup with them last year. So yeah, I could see them beating Washington. I don't personally have them doing it. I have Washington advancing and playing Tampa in the Eastern Conference Final, but it wouldn't surprise me necessarily to see New York pull it together like that. I think that the first round is going to be very telling what they do with Pittsburgh. I mean, if they win, how did they go down? Did they have a lot of games that went to overtime? How, what kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Endurance do they have left? But it's possible. But again, this isn't a team that's made those long runs, and you know how the process goes. Kind of, you win a round one year, then the next year you win another, and then then you're in it. So to see them get to the ECF that quickly would be something, and that they could do it. Nobody's out of it until they're out of it, like you said. But I think Washington's experience, and I think they're just a better team, to be quite frank with you. But Trotz is the wild card in that series if it obviously occurs.
I have Tampa and the Islanders for the Eastern Conference Finals, and then for the West, because I would have the Lightning beating the Bruins in round 2. In the West, I have Calgary, Vegas, and Dallas, St. Louis. And then I have in the conference finals, I have Calgary beating Vegas. I don't know how many games these are going to take, but I do think Calgary is going to beat Vegas. And I have St. Louis beating Dallas. So my Western Conference finals are going to be Calgary, St. Louis, which would be a very interesting playoff series to watch. And then in the final, I do have the Lightning and the St. Louis Blues. Call me crazy, but I do think the Blues are going to beat out the Flames solely due to goaltending. I mean, this would have been crazy to say in January, right? But I believe Jordan Binnington more so than I believe Mike Smith, or by extension, David Rittich. I mean, it's tough, right? But he's been playing so extremely well that it's tough for me to say that Calgary's going to win that series, although I don't think it's going to take any less than 7 games. That's going to be a 7-game series, Calgary and St. Louis, if that happens. And then in the final, I mean, I would be out of my mind if I didn't say the Lightning were going to win the Stanley Cup, right? This is, again, a juggernaut team, and if they don't win, it's a disaster. It's a major, huge collapse. And I do think they pull it out, although it's going to be harder than perhaps people would expect.
Well, our Western conferences are very different, Andrew. I've got Vegas beating Calgary.
Okay.
And because Vegas is my hot team going into this. And Calgary, like you said, with Mike Smith, I don't see any way they beat Las Vegas, to be honest with you. I think that maybe more than any of the other second round matchups we've kind of put together here, I don't know if I see a team that matches up with Calgary better than Las Vegas does. So I've got them taking that one, and then
Vegas, though, you said Vegas was coming in hot, right? If I could interrupt you for just a second, I mean,
yeah, of course.
3-5-2 in their last 10 games. They've lost 2 in a row.
I thought you'd bring that up. Nope,
their last game they dropped to the Kings 5-2. I mean, listen, this was a very hot team before that stretch when they got Mark Stone and they were playing very well, but in the last 10. They haven't been too hot. They haven't been as good as they showed right after the trade deadline.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But in saying that, I can't ignore the amount of talent they have. And yeah, they were losing. And if you want to look at the PDO of it all, you could do that as well, which obviously plays a factor. But oh God, I don't think Calgary is as good as their record. I really just do not feel that they're a team built to go to the conference final. Yeah, I mean they're not exactly impressive in their last 10 either. I mean they're 6-4, which I guess is fine. But yeah, playoff Marc-Andre Fleury versus any manifestation of Mike Smith. I got to give it to Vegas. But that's just me. And like you said, they were hot after the trade deadline. And I guess I'm looking at it at a little bit broader scope of games. But you're right. They did not finish. They did not cross the finish line. They kind of limped through it. So, yeah, I think they kick it up. I've got a lot of confidence in VGK, to be perfectly honest with you. But,
and you have St. Louis and Nashville, right? That second round matchup, which I mean they've been bitter rivals in the playoffs for forever now. Are you who are you taking in that one?
Not only do I think Nashville wins that series, I think they kick the snot out of St. Louis.
No way. No way that's happening.
Wait, I'm letting you know. I'm letting you know now. If that series happens, it won't go past 6 games. 6 games is the absolute max, in my opinion.
Why? Give me your reasoning. Why do you think that this is going to be a lopsided affair?
Well, I've got a couple, reasons. Obviously, number one, something I've touched on already. I value playoff experience in a huge way. Nashville has it. They're going to enter the postseason with the mentality that it's got to be now, right? I mean, they've made 2 consecutive deep runs. No cup yet. They need to win, and St. Louis, as much as I love them. And think they're really like the kind of the Cinderella story of at least the second half of the season, how they kind of pulled themselves from the basement, so to speak. Without Jordan Binnington, we're both doing really good at saying that name today.
I keep wanting to call him Binghamton, but his last name is not Binghamton. That's for sure.
That's us New York guys. But. I don't think he's going to be able to do that in the playoffs. I mean, you're talking about a guy who he's never had, he's never played, I don't think, and he didn't play all season, but he's going to have a very heavy workload. This will be the most he's ever played in a year. I don't know if unless he's Superman, he's going to wear down, and Nashville's not going to relent, on a guy like that. And to be perfectly honest with you, St. Louis, a team that, they got better at it in the second half of the year. They're not a goal-scoring juggernaut, not by a long shot. I mean, you talked about Dallas at 210, and Nashville's got actually fewer goals than St. Louis does too. But I don't know, man. There's something keeping me from believing that the St. Louis Blues will go to the semis this year. I just don't see it. I think Nashville pulls it together, and like you said, Pekka Rinne, he's great in the first round, but man, I just don't see it. I don't see it, and I want to. I like the Blues. I'm kind of like a closet fan of theirs, which so it's a little tougher, for me. They're evenly matched teams. They're not super lopsided. There's a playoff mentality, and there are teams that are just playoff teams, and I think Nashville just comes into that second round and kicks the crap out of them.
You might want to tell that to Pekka Rinne. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Listen, you've had a couple hot takes on here, and I get my one. This is my one. An absolute smackdown by the Nashville Predators, I guess, is my hot take. But yeah, I have a feeling that they absolutely run away with that series.
So then you have Nashville and Vegas in the Western Conference Finals. Now, for the battle, I would assume you also have the Lightning in the final.
Yes.
So for the battle to have the pleasure of playing the Lightning in the final, who is coming out on top?
Yeah, this one was tough because you don't have that the top seed in the West in Calgary, so it's not as straightforward where like, oh yeah, they're just the most dominant team, because I don't feel that they are. But in saying that, this is a tough one because it's a rematch. It's it's a rematch of the conference finals from last season, and I think Nashville takes it this time.
Wow,
I really do. Yeah, I think they do.
Even with Pekka Rinne not being able to stop beach balls, you really think that's going to happen? I
do. Okay. I mean, it's going to be a close series. I like it. I'm actively rooting for that series to take place because I think it'll be just obscenely entertaining. But again, we talk about Rinne and he's not good in the playoffs, but I mean, I think the more you're there, I mean, this isn't foreign to him anymore. He's not a kid.
He wasn't a kid against Winnipeg. No, he wasn't a kid against Pittsburgh.
I get it. You say Pittsburgh, and they managed to make the deep run then, but that aside, I have a tough time believing Pekka Rinne it gets mentally shook in these games. He's a veteran goalie. He's been here before. They've made consecutive deep runs, regardless of his performance. I mean, if he pulls it together, who's beating Nashville?
The Lightning.
No, I mean in the West. I'm sorry.
The Lightning are going to beat them.
Stop it. I should have clarified. In the West, if you got a hot Pekka Rinne, who? There's nobody in the West who I think beats them if their goaltending is there. And I have a tough time, resigning myself to a trend that, okay, Pekka Rinne is just going to be bad in the playoffs forever. I don't buy that. So I've got Nashville going to the final, and Tampa Bay winning it because Tampa Bay is just disgusting.
Pekka Rinne is 36.
I know that. It's his last chance. This is it for him. I know you don't like Pekka Rinne in the playoffs.
I never said that. I need you to find a clip of me saying that because you will not.
You don't like him in the playoffs? You literally just said it.
I don't like him in the playoffs. I never said I don't like him. Period. He could be a fantastic human being for all I know. I'm not sick. I never. Even when I trashed Erik Branson, right? I trash Erik Branson as he is as a hockey player. I'm not saying I don't like the guy. I don't like him as a player, but as a guy, as a human being, I mean, I don't know. I've never met him. I've never talked to him.
I don't doubt that you don't hate Pekka Rinne, the human being. Andrew got triggered.
Wow.
But you got triggered a little bit by that.
I don't hate anybody, but I would rather not take Pekka Rinne in a deep playoff run. I just wouldn't because of what he's done in the past.
But you're gonna take Jordan. You're gonna take Jordan. Oh my God, Binnington.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Well, it's tough, right? I mean, the idea is that Jordan Binnington has played so well up to this point, and there's no reason or anything that would suggest that game one, round one hits, and all of a sudden, all of that progress is going to be dissolved, right? There's nothing to suggest that kind of upward trend is going to just suddenly, fall into an abyss. Nothing is there to suggest that. So that's why in this particular instance, I'm taking Jordan Binnington in that situation. But if it was, let's say, next season where he would be, this isn't a shot out of a cannon situation, then I would perhaps look at the situation a little bit differently. But as of right now, because of how well he's playing and the previous track record of Pekka Rinne, I would take Jordan in that situation.
Okay. Hey, listen, that's what makes the playoffs fun. We'll see. Like I said, there's very few lopsided matchups in this, and oftentimes teams with the hot goalies make it happen. And Jordan Binnington has been a hot goalie the whole year, so I get your logic. I'm not hating on you. I'm not hating on the St. Louis pick. I just like Nashville better.
Well, no one's hating on anything, man. We have some takes. We have some hot takes. And which takes will be correct? I mean, obviously we don't know that. That's why we're talking about it right now. It will be seen as the weeks go by. But as of now, I think both of us have a lot of ground to stand on. Both of us have pretty reasonable, reasonable reasons why we chose the teams that we chose. Both of us have. We're not just picking teams out of a hat and suggesting that they're going to win the series. You have your reasons and I have mine, and both of which could be the reasons why that team wins that series. We don't know until the games happen which of those reasons will be the biggest factors. We don't know yet. And this is why the playoffs are so much fun, and which also leads me to the question that Mark Freitas dropped into my DMs a few days ago, in that what do I think, and by extension, what do we think of the current playoff format? I'm going to let you take this one first, and then I'm going to add to it as well, because there are pros and cons. That is for sure about the current playoff bracket that the NHL creates.
It's funny as a Sabres fan, the Sabres haven't been in the playoffs since they changed the format.
Yikes.
So yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes indeed. I personally liked it better how it was. I know there's the argument for, you're forging division rivalries, which is cool, but I'm looking at the East, and there's just no way Boston and Toronto should be essentially eliminating one of those two teams who are, in my opinion, two of the top three teams in the Eastern Conference. That one of them has to be gone after one round. It's absurd, and the fact that we're going on another year where, and I don't, as a fan, I don't like Toronto. They're one of my least favorite teams, but to see them basically, have to play the either second or third team, whatever, in what is a very strong Atlantic is rough. It's tough to watch, and you want the best teams to advance, and I believe this current system precludes all of the best teams from advancing because you're pitting 2, 4, 6, depending on how everything shakes out, against each other right off the bat.
I have to agree, and I also have to add a couple of things to this as well. There's pros and cons, right? Because the pro is a lot of the times, like the Lightning will still play the worst team in the Blue Jackets and this and that, and the matchups are a little bit fairer. I mean, we talked about this. The only one lopsided matchup in round one is Tampa Bay and Columbus. In a 1-8 format, that really wouldn't happen. But there's a lot of cons to this as well. But I want to kind of reference the NBA here for a second, because in the NBA, right, we know, I mean, at least we have a very strong feeling that the 1 seed will very more than likely beat the 8 seed. Doesn't matter if it's Golden State versus anybody in the 8th seed. Golden State's going to win, right? There's no real doubt that will happen. That isn't 100% the case in the NHL. I mean, we've seen back when it was 1-8 how a few 8 seeds would beat 1 seeds, but it still wasn't super likely. So I guess in the regard of fairness, this kind of matchup is a little bit fairer, a little bit more exciting for the fans. But then you have Boston and Toronto in round one when they were a few points apart in the standings. I mean, like, that shouldn't happen. In 1-8, the 4 and the 5 would play each other, and that would be fine because they are the middle of the pack teams. But you have Boston with 107 points for the Boston Bruins playing the Maple Leafs, who had 100 points in round one. That shouldn't happen at all. That kind of matchup just shouldn't take place no matter what. I mean, the Islanders have 103 points. The Penguins have 100 points. Washington at 104, Carolina at 99. This is a little bit skewed this season because of how ridiculously good the Eastern Conference was. I mean, the Canadiens with 96 points didn't make the playoffs. That ties the NHL record for the amount of points a team had without making the postseason. 96 points. So the Eastern Conference was stacked this season. So this might be a bad example. But I would have to argue that overall there are more cons than pros to this playoff format because you don't pit. There's no benefit to having a higher ranking in this sort of format than in a 1-8 because you have Boston versus Toronto series, you have Vegas and San Jose series, you have round one matchups that are way closer than they perhaps should be. Now, again, in the NHL, there aren't ever a lot of lopsided matchups. We have one, like I said, with Toronto and Columbus. At least that's what we think so. Columbus could very well, I guess, storm out and win the first game or 2 or 3 or even 4. I mean, we don't know, right? We haven't seen the games yet. We don't know what's going to happen. But logic would say that Tampa Bay is going to win that one pretty easily. But there's overall, right, while I see what the point of this system was, I don't think it benefits the sport as a whole when you have juggernaut teams being kicked out in the first round. If you want to see great teams should be playing farther than best of 16 here. So this kind of system doesn't allow that to happen for every team that deserves to make it past the first round.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. I completely agree. I think the 1-versus-8 format was better. And there could still be upsets, like you said. I mean, there's lower seed teams in the 1-through-8 format who obviously advanced. I mean, LA did it when they won the cup. New Jersey did it a couple times,
and they did it in ridiculous fashion by reverse sweeping.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like we both just alluded to, pitting the best teams against each other is just foolish.
I absolutely agree. Now, a little bit of a lightning round here because we're already at the hour mark. We have a couple of quick segments left to go here. So I want your take on the Todd McClellan to Buffalo. It's not a rumor because it is likely to happen, but your take on McClellan to Buffalo, because I mean, if there was one word to summarize Todd McClellan's career in the NHL, it would be underachieving.
Yeah. When that news first came down today, I was pissed. I mean, I was not happy with that move at all. It happened, it seemed very hastily. Obviously, they'd been considering their options before officially firing Housley, no doubt. But it seems like they're letting kind of recency bias dictate them to an extent where they tried, first time head coach Phil Housley, it didn't work out. So now we're going to abandon that. It needs to be a guy with experience, and Todd McClellan has experience. He's been to the playoffs, and that's what we need to do. We need to get to the playoffs. It's like, okay, let's back it up a minute. Todd McClellan had juggernaut teams with San Jose, and he never got to the promised land. He never won a cup. I don't even think he ever got to a Stanley Cup final. So there's that, right? He's won one playoff series in the last 7 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and that was a really cool Cinderella season with Edmonton. Like, hey, they're turning it around. Look at this, they're so great. Only to regress by 27 points the next season. This seems like a panic move, and it seems a little bit skittish to me, where you've got guys, you've got several names, you've got Keefe, you've got Knobloch, you've got Richard Gromberg out there who are innovative coaches, new coaches. They're green, they don't have NHL head coaching experience. That I think you're doing yourself an injustice, not only in the short term, but especially in the long term, to avoid these guys for the sake of just getting to the playoffs. And I think they're letting their experience recently with an inexperienced candidate, or an inexperienced head coach rather, kind of dictate their next move. It's recycling. I mean, we did the same exact thing with Dan Bilesma. Okay, oh wow, we had a coach who had past experience and past success, and that was the move. And then he got fired. It's like, oh, we need the exact opposite. Now the exact opposite guy, the young guy who was supposed to be innovative, he wasn't. Now he failed. Oh, we got to go back to experience then. That's what we have to do now. And it's just a little cowardly to me. And there are better options out there than McClellan. And yeah, you could make arguments like he's got experience. He made it to the playoffs. He took, an Edmonton team that was terrible and had a terrible GM and a brutal front office, and he found a way to get them to the playoffs. It's like, yeah, great. And then he went and didn't do it again. So is that the goal, to get to the playoffs? Fine. If that's your goal, then great. Hire Todd McClellan, but it shouldn't be any team's goal to just get there. It's uninspiring. Nothing he has done makes him more viable, in my opinion, than anyone else. Sabres fans, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them are banging the drum for experience now, because these young guys need to get whipped into shape. Grit, determination, other intangible. Hashtag Manalytics, right? So it's whatever. I mean, it's going to be disappointing. Of course, I'll be hopeful I'm wrong, and that this is the team that Todd McClellan can finally overachieve with. I don't think he will. So my level of optimism is kind of down, and I get why Jason Botterill would do this to an extent, right? They have to be good next year, or he's going to be gone. I mean, this was his third season. Regardless of what you want to believe in Housley's first year, they underperformed. Finishing last was not in the plans last season. This season, I mean, if you take the 10-game win streak out of it, you'd be competing with Ottawa for dead last again. So, progress wasn't made. So this has got to be a big year for the Sabres. And by, more directly, Jason Botterill. So going with an experienced coach that maybe you can lean on a little more, from a leadership standpoint, okay, like good, fine, whatever. If that, it might be a little bit of self-preservation there, which I understand. The guy's got a job to keep, but at the same time, I have a really hard time being excited about Todd McLellan.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that was perfect, I think, because Todd McLellan, right, he underperformed in the powerhouse that was the San Jose Sharks a few years ago. Couldn't get it done there. Then went to Edmonton, though he did carry that team to the postseason, and then he turned around, and then that team went back to being terrible like we all know that they can be. And then it was subsequently fired for a coach that did the same thing in Ken Hitchcock, and which is why I would expect that he also won't be in the mix in Edmonton next season either. I mean, Todd McLellan, I don't think he's the right coach for Buffalo either. I think the best thing that Buffalo could have done is either one, reach out to Sheldon Keefe, who coaches the Toronto Marlies, because he's been fantastic
Absolutely.
there, or hire someone new. I mean, you absolutely nailed this. There's no reason for the Sabres to be recycling ideas. You already did that, and that did nothing for you. There's no reason to be hitting the same thing over. I think it was Einstein. I could be wrong, but he said, or somebody said, if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, then I mean, I think you're
definition of insanity.
Yeah, exactly. You have to try something new eventually, right? If one thing constantly isn't working for you, I mean, hey, try reaching out to the AHL coach. Try reaching out to somebody in the NCAA, like the Rangers did with David Quinn. Although that team didn't do that great this season, David Quinn instilled a fantastic culture in that team, and they will do better next year. At least that's the hope. That David Quinn didn't fail because of him. He failed because his personnel weren't that great. But at the end of the day, the Rangers didn't just hire someone from the NHL to recycle the same old ideas. No, they reached out and they got someone new. They got someone with a fresh look on the sport, and he did wonders for that team in the locker room. And the Sabres needed desperately to do the same thing here, and it looks like that's not happening. Now, there are, it's not official yet, at least as of this recording, which is Monday late afternoon. Again, we are recording Monday due to some pretty airtight scheduling conflict, so this is the only day that I had time to record the show, and I appreciate you, Ant, for taking the time on short notice and hopping on. I don't know why Buffalo is doing this. I see why, and you were absolutely right for Botterill, reaching out to McLellan and trying to do this as a last hope, as a safety net for him, but he really should have swung for the fences and gotten someone else, and it sucks. It really sucks for Buffalo. They should have gotten someone else, and it didn't happen, and now I feel like in two seasons, we're going to be having the same conversation that we had, that we're having now. It's not going to change much.
Yeah, and then everyone's going to be clamoring for a new coach because we're behind the times, and the veteran experience didn't work, and we're going to be right back where we were when they fired Bylsma. It's just recency bias. It's what happened to you most recently has the biggest effect on your brain, and how easily people forget. And if you want to compare their resumes, Dan Bylsma was more impressive. Sorry, he was a more impressive candidate than Todd McLellan is. It's just, and what sucks especially about this is the Sabres showed their hands. So now if you lose out on McLellan, we know that they're going after veteran coaches. Who's next? Alain Vigneault? Jacques Martin?
If you hire
gross.
Alain Vigneault,
Gross.
I will laugh so hard. I mean, here's the thing.
Dude.
Like it'll be funny for us, but I will feel so sad for you and the rest of the Sabres fandom. I mean, as a Rangers fan, you do not want Alain Vigneault behind your bench.
More. I couldn't agree more, right? So now you almost have to root that they make it happen with McLellan, because God, if we're going the experienced coach route, who else is out there that's even remotely impressive? You know, who's had any kind of success? It's like, yeah, so if we went into this whole process knowing, right, that the Sabres were absolutely unequivocally going to go for a veteran head coach or a head coach with past experience, then yeah, I mean, shoot, McLellan's probably your most impressive guy then, besides Quenneville, who was gone to Florida as soon as, the season ended. So, it's frustrating. And you know what? We felt for so long that the Sabres were behind the curve, just where the NHL was going as a league. And instead of taking a swing at the next innovative guy, and Grönborg is my guy, I think he is going to be an excellent head coach. He's so innovative. He's so unique. There's a Swedish connection, which I don't know if there's an organization in the league with more Swedish players than the Sabres have. It's infuriating. And, I'm going to root for Todd McLellan. I hope that it's great. And I hope that, one other thing I just want to touch on for just my own sanity. You got on Sabres Twitter right now, you've got a lot of people saying, well, yeah, but that's Edmonton. I'm sorry. Look in the mirror. What is so much more impressive about the Buffalo Sabres situation over the last 10, 7, whatever many years you want to call it, than Edmonton? Nothing. They're identical. So now you bring in Todd McLellan, you absolutely unequivocally need Jason Botterill to do a full-scale sweep of just acquiring talent, because the Sabres don't have much of it. So now he needs to fill out the entire depth of his roster perfectly, because Todd McLellan is not going to get you more from less. So if you don't do that, he has no track record of squeezing, blood out of a stone, so to speak. So you've pigeonholed yourself. Now this is completely on Botterill. You have very little innovation, or at least no history of it. And people want to say, well, maybe McClellan's changed. It's like, yeah, maybe. But is that what you want to base your hope on? Is that what you want to hang on to? Is maybe a guy who, again, he was under, Chiarelli at the time, but who came out and said the best analytics are my eyeballs. You really, really think that guy's changing?
Big yikes.
Big yikes. Yeah. It's just, it sucks. And it's sad. And, at this point, the Sabres organization has lost the benefit of the doubt. And people want to say, can we wait to criticize, what they're doing here before we at least play some games? No. I mean, we can. Yeah. I won't publicly criticize this coach until games are played. I'll make that.
I feel like you're doing that right now, but anyway.
No, because he's not our coach yet.
That's
true.
You're right.
There are other candidates out there, right? And I'd like to see them. But you know what? If he's hired, great. I will hope for the best. But at this point, I mean, I don't know how you can expect someone to be excited, let alone just accept that, or be okay with this hire. I mean, there's nothing Todd McLellan's done to bring any intrigue for me, at least. It's just a move that, unless he's had some career epiphany and suddenly realized where the league was going in the last 6 months since he's been employed, great. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's disappointing. I think there were innovative, cool, unique options out there. Guys who could bring a new perspective, and like you said, it's recycled ideas. And that's what you're getting now. And you got the same thing with Dan Bylsma, and it's just history repeating itself.
Before you blow a gasket, before your head absolutely explodes here, one quick last thing before we end the show. We got to give our award predictions, and we're going to run through this. I'm going to name the trophy and some potential candidates. And I would like your winner for this trophy. So the first one that we're going to do is the Norris Trophy. Some candidates like Brent Burns, Giordano, Carlson. You could add in some other names in there as well. Those are the three biggest ones. Who's going to win?
Ooh, that's a really, really good one. And the Norris Trophy is actually something I've been paying really close attention to, because we've got, Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo, who we hope is a future Norris Trophy, candidate. So I've been kind of looking at, okay, what are the Norris candidates? Like, what are they producing? What are they doing for their clubs? Like, what are these guys specifically, like, really diving into their numbers? Like, what are they? And, we know what they are on the surface from a point production standpoint and all that good stuff. And that's kind of what this trophy is. It's really the best offensive defenseman, if we're being real with ourselves. Yeah, and I've got I'm not so sure he's much of a dark horse since he's kind of mentioned in every conversation, but I don't see him picked as the winner often. I like Mark Giordano for this one, personally.
I absolutely agree with you. I really, 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 truly hope Mark Giordano wins this award. You're too. Totally right.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, Brent Burns, a defenseman getting 83 points is bananas and really, really cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. But I like that. I feel that Giordano is a little bit less of a forward-playing defense, if that makes any sense. I think he brings you a little bit more of a well-rounded game. And if this really is an award for the best defenseman and not just the best offensive defenseman, then Mark Giordano, I think, if I had to pick between the two, I'd want Giordano on my team.
Absolutely right. Vezina Trophy. There are a lot of interesting names. Freddie Anderson, obviously, Vasilevsky. Honestly, I mean, Ben Bishop is a name that nobody thought of prior to this season. This man, 27 wins, right? 27, 15, and 2, 1.98 goals against average, 934 save percentage. And he did, as we talked earlier, he got no goal support. None.
He's the runaway winner for me.
I have to agree with that.
Runaway winner for all the reasons you just alluded to. I mean, not a strong team. Without Ben Bishop, I don't think Dallas makes the playoffs, if I'm being perfectly frank with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he carried. I mean, he's their MVP. He's got the best save percentage in the league, best goals against, not the best goals against average. Bennington, I guess, if you're not really considering the sample size, it has that. But yeah, I mean, he's absurd, and he has really put the team on his back. And wow, I mean, if the league would entertain something like this, which recently hasn't been the case. I mean, man, there's an argument for him for Hart Trophy. He's really something. I mean, he's had such an impressive year. Yeah, he's my Vezina winner as well. We agree on that one. That's not to discount Vasilevsky, because I think he's second for me. But on a team like Tampa, I'm not gonna say it's easy to be a great goalie, because it's never easy to be a great goalie. But I mean, given the circumstances, what Ben Bishop did, oh my God, yeah, he's my guy for sure.
Here's the thing, right? I don't want to give the award to Vasi because at the end of the day, right, Louis Domingue, who is not an NHL caliber goaltender, right? He wasn't really that good. He went 21-5 this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that
21-5, 2.88 goals against average, 908 save percentage, 21-5. I mean, no one is suggesting that it's easy to be a goaltender for any team in the National Hockey League, but it's probably the easiest for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, when you've got, goal support for historically great goal support. Yeah, I mean, for sure. What goalie with a 908 posted a record like that ever?
Yeah,
I mean, well, maybe
nobody,
not ever, because save percentages were very low in like the early 90s and before that. But you get the idea. Yeah, runaway winner for me at least.
I would have to agree with that. Calder Trophy. Now, I got a lot of flack for saying that Dahlin should win over Elias Pettersson on Twitter. I have actually gotten a couple of tweets today about it also, even though I haven't tweeted about it in about over a month now. People are still angry. It's mostly Vancouver fans, mostly Canucks fans that are angry at me for picking Dahlin or Pettersson. One, I don't have a vote, so I don't know why you're angry at me. I don't have a vote. I don't have a say in this. Two, I'm not discounting. I'm not saying that Pettersson's season was bad, because his season was terrific. He had an incredible season, but I do need at least the Canucks fans that were angry at me on Twitter about it to kind of take a deep dive look into what makes a Calder Trophy winner, right? It's not who has the most points. It's who has the overall most impressive season as a rookie and who contributes to their team the most. Now, Elias Pettersson excels in both categories, but Rasmus Dahlin was the runaway best player on the blue line for the Sabres, and if he wasn't there this season, I would very much argue that the Sabres would be worse than the Senators by far. I mean, he was the shining star on that blue line where there really wasn't none, except for Pilot for a little bit when Housley would maybe occasionally play him. I mean, that's a whole different topic for a whole other day. But obviously, Rasmus Dahlin is going to be a star in this league. And I do feel like if you take into consideration every single aspect of the game and what makes the Calder Trophy winner the best rookie, and forget about points for a second, even though Dahlin had over 40 points, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about that, but he did have a pretty solid season on the score sheet as a defenseman. Overall, I'm taking Dahlin, but Pettersson's a very, very close second.
And it's funny, even as a Sabres fan, I'm going to disagree with you here. If this award was held with any kind of weight toward age, and Elias Pettersson is not old, he's 20 for Christ's sake, but Rasmus Dahlin is now second in NHL history for most points by an 18-year-old defenseman, behind Phil Housley. But yeah,
how ironic is that? Jeez,
how ironic is that? Yeah, he passed Bobby Orr for second. So I mean, he's unbelievable, and there are some people who believe he's not even going to be nominated, which would be an atrocity, an absolute atrocity. But Elias Pettersson, 20 years old, and I know point production isn't the end all be all, but almost averaging a point per game on a Canucks team that's not very good. I know the Sabres aren't good either. But man, I mean, he's been their linchpin. I mean, he's been everything for them. He's what he's done this season is nothing short of spectacular. And I'm curious what would have happened if he didn't get injured for that 10 or 11 game stint, whatever it was. They're not as far off as people want to say. I think people are saying Pettersson is the obvious runaway winner here. I think Dahlin has a very solid case, for the reasons you just mentioned. I mean, 18 years old, the best defenseman on his team for sure by a mile. But man, it's tough for me to ignore just how much of an offensive powerhouse Elias Pettersson is, and just how refined he looks at 20 years old. I mean, Dahlin wasn't without blemishes. I mean, he's fantastic, but there was a learning curve, right? There were ugly moments, which everyone expected. If you thought Rasmus Dahlin was going to come in and be Brent Burns, or he was going to come in and be Victor Hedman, you were going to be disappointed. That's not how defensemen develop, right? And again, there's the argument of weighting it towards position too, because obviously, it's harder to adjust to being a defenseman in the league than it is to being a forward. Just historically, they have a longer ETA, so to speak. I'm going to give it to Pettersson just because to be that much of a juggernaut, to shoot at 19% through 71 games is just gross. And to average, he's got 7 game-winning goals. I mean, he's just unbelievable on a not very good team. Yeah, they're close. They're closer than most people think. But personally, if I had a vote, I'd be voting Pettersson.
That's fair. Can't argue that. I mean, again, I feel like both of us have very strong bases in order, for our opinions, and I feel like it could definitely go both ways. I do feel like Pettersson's going to win, but if I had
I will say this. I will say this, though. My bias, or not my bias, that's the wrong word for it, but my opinion, I guess, is influenced by what I know historically who this award goes to.
Yeah.
And what types of players. So I think predicting Dahlin is maybe an act of futility, knowing the history of this award and what kind of players it favors. But yeah, so I do want to put that caveat in there that I am being influenced by the reality of how they award this thing, if that makes any sense.
No, you're totally right. I mean, the biggest end all be all for these types of awards is, how many points did they score?
Right.
And that obviously shouldn't be the biggest caveat of who wins and who doesn't, but that unfortunately is the case, whether we like it or not. So that's just the way it is. And also Jack Adams. Now, I feel like this is an easy choice because it has to go to Barry Trotz. But I do feel like John Cooper needs a little bit of more respect than he's getting, even though the Lightning are far and away the better team on the ice, on paper, etc. I mean, this is a team that has tied the league record in wins. I feel like that deserves a little bit of credit. Now, Barry Trotz is going to win, and I hope he wins because that team's a disaster on paper, and yet this team is making the playoffs, and now I'm picking them to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, this is a Jack Adams award. I mean, if you were to look up how to win in the dictionary, you would see a picture of Barry Trotz next to the definition. But I feel like John Cooper should be getting a little bit more praise than he's been getting.
Yeah, and you go back to the history of the award, right? And it has a tendency to be given to maybe not the best coach, but let's call it the most improved coach.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
The coach who surpassed expectations, let's say. I think the Lightning roster-wise being a finished product hurts Cooper in that regard, just based on the history of it. You're right, but what he's done this year is amazing, even for his roster. I mean, it's just bananas. They're probably the best team ever, in my opinion. So yeah, it's tough to discount John Cooper because he did what he was supposed to. But Barry Trotz taking a team that lost John Tavares and was not good with Tavares on it, and turning them into not just a playoff participant, but a contender. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And one guy who I hope gets at least a nomination, because he deserves it, is Rod Brind'Amour. He's not going to win, but he deserves to be nominated for the same reasons Trotz has, taking a team that lost a star player in Jeff Skinner, a high point producer, goal producer more specifically, and doing what he's done with them is just incredible. So based on the history of the award, it's going to Trotz. Cooper has a claim to it to an extent, just based on having a historically amazing season. But, it depends how much you weight what kind of roster they had. And if that goes into it in a heavy way, which I believe it does and will continue to do, Barry Trotz is the winner.
Anthony, you've been an absolute pleasure to have back on this show. Plug your social media, plug where people can read your stuff, and I very much appreciate you coming on such short notice.
Oh, dude, glad to do it. Thanks for having me. Excited to jump on, and you caught me at an emotional point during where this
well, I gave you the platform to talk about Todd McClellan,
for better or worse. So. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. If any listeners are interested, I write as a staff writer for Die by the Blade, SB Nation, Sabres coverage site. And on Twitter, you can find me at Chandra Sports, SCIANDRA Sports. And Andrew, it's been awesome, man. As always, thanks for having me back on.
You got it, man. This has been episode 43 of Cho Squared, episode 44 coming up next week. We're almost at a year. Jesus, I mean, the weeks just fly by. Episode 44 next week. I'll talk to you then.